Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up.
Got it!
Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by and powered by the great folks at Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymoorehonda.com to get more to your door, and the Wow Food Group and its family of restaurants in and around the Bloomington and Bedford area. Great places like the Chop Shop, Market, and Restaurant. And I was in there 2 days ago, just stopped by, and oh my goodness, they have the only and the biggest, freshest assortment of seafood now. And I mean, it looks like one of those seafood places you'd walk into, you see on TV in Seattle, you know, where they're throwing the big fish.
Oh, yeah.
They got some of those, they've got everything. Trout, they've got grouper, you know, the ugly grouper. They also, the ugly grouper down on Anna Maria Island, which grouper is a very, very popular sandwich in Florida, and it is not inexpensive down there. But anyway, they've got fresh everything. They had tuna that was like 4 inches thick, fresh.
How big was their shrimp? Surely they had some shrimp.
Oh, big old fatties.
Love me some good shrimp.
The salmon, of course, was as fresh as can be, but they had just seafood, crab legs, seafood, man. I'm talking fresh seafood that you cannot get anywhere else. So that was awesome to see. Look forward to that. And you've got the funny thing is, or the great thing is, you can walk over to the market side and say, hey, well, I love that steak. I want that 2-inch ribeye, and they'll pick that out and go make it for you in the restaurant side. So very nice. Very, very nice. How's everybody doing? Great to see everybody jumping on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. You can do so as well if you're listening on YouTube. And if you are, make sure to please subscribe and hit the like button. Otherwise, we appreciate everybody listening on radio around the state on the Ref ESPN 97.7. Always the right call down in Evansville. 1380 The Fan, Fort Wayne Sports Station. And AM 1230, 104.7 WJOB TV, the voice of the region in Chicago and Hammond. So we're all across the state and around the world on YouTube. Appreciate everybody jumping on. Great people on the Andy Moore Honda hotline already ready to go. Kent jumping on from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Fred from Easton, Pennsylvania, the Easton Assassin. Brian, we appreciate you saying hello, and it's good to listen to the show every day. We thank you, my friend. Heath is Danville, Kentucky. You know, my family originally is from down in that area.
Okay. Yeah, I have some friends actually, not in Danville, but pretty close to it.
Dog-faced, Pony Soldier. I love crazy names. Unique names because there's always a story behind them. Steve up in Marion, basketball heaven up there, baby. It's a good place. 5 lefts on the deal. Monroeville, EKH. He says King Crab or bust. You got that right, buddy. I love some crab legs. It's nice if the best crab legs I ever had was at Bally's in Las Vegas 15, 20 years ago, probably, because they were on the half shell. It was, oh, wow. Sage Steele departs ESPN. Now that we'll have to figure it out about that. And yes, Scott Dolson is on today. I didn't even mention that. On the program today, of course, Indiana Athletics Director Scott Dolson joins us in our second hour, along with Rick Bozich. Dylan Sin normally with us from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Today he was not able to do so. Scott Dolson on the program today, Indiana. So looking forward to that. We'll get you some questions, and don't throw them in now because it won't have them ready. But when he joins us, give us your questions. What do you think about what should be done at Memorial Stadium? They're getting ready to send that questionnaire out, and I'll tell you some of the things I'm going to ask him about. I'm going to ask about the concerts. I think it's a great idea. No, well, I
I'm
think
not
it's
laughing
a great
because I
idea.
disagree, but I think it's funny that you're getting to speak to the head man about it.
Well, it is weird because I just brought that up recently. It's just ironic, but I'm going to ask because I don't know, and there are probably reasons that if it's not being done, there may be a reason why. It might be cost prohibitive. It may not be worth the added headache because you've got a football game. First of all, for me, it's an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
It's an 8-hour day all day long. And I'm not going in tailgating. Now, the tailgaters don't stay as long afterwards, so maybe that's a wash there where it equals out. But football games are long. They're long days. They're long days for security, first of all. Security has to be there well before the people arrive, and they're probably until they leave. So now if you added a concert, you're adding another 3 to 4 hours. So now you're going to make a long day 4 hours longer. I'm just coming up with potential reasons why that would be prohibitive to something like that, and I would understand that. That's a lot to ask of people that are doing the work. But if that's a way to keep butts in the seats, I don't know if you would generate more income, but the concession stands would be open. I'm just curious. So yeah, I would be curious to see about that, and we'll find out. But lots of other things that are going on in the program. A lot of things are going well. Obviously, I'm going to ask about college realignment. That's the biggest things. The effects of realignment, the benefits. I still think this. Well, not realignment, but the dissolution of the divisions is of great benefit to Indiana football. Tremendous. It lifts a freaking tomb off of their back because of the schedule. Let's just be honest. That's just a brutal schedule. Maryland, Rutgers, they have the same schedule. Lifts the tomb off of their back as well. This is going to benefit Maryland. Maybe Rutgers. I mean, it also is getting that off of their back. I mean, how about Rutgers? I mean, it's tough. All three of these teams have had to deal with that juggernaut of the Big Ten East. And it's difficult to grow under that when you have three of the premier programs in the game on your schedule, guaranteed every year in your division. So I think that could be of great help to Indiana. I've said that all along. The schedule lightens up next year.
Well, it did before they had to be scrapped.
It will still
As long as it stays similar enough. I mean, obviously the biggest takeaways from what was supposed to be the 2024 schedule, you miss Ohio State and Michigan. Those are the two big ones. You don't have to travel out west. You were going to play UCLA, but it was going to be in Memorial Stadium. You weren't going to have to face USC in 2024. Now you got to add in the fact, though, that Oregon and Washington are coming in. It wouldn't surprise me if they try to keep the schedules as close to their original format as they were going to be.
I agree.
You're probably going to play at least one of Oregon or Washington, and it's likely going to be on the road considering you're already getting UCLA at home.
Possible.
That'd be my guess.
That's very possible, and that makes sense. But see, that's where things go awry. It makes sense. So now I wonder if that'll happen. But yeah, I don't think the schedule will change terribly, because that would mean just blowing it up completely. They're probably going to look to say, hey, can we work this in? And it does give them the opportunity, though, to lessen greatly the travel load of both USC and UCLA. They should both get games against Washington and Oregon.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, and USC. So there's three. There's three of your conference games. You've got 6 more you've got to play. And now if they play, okay, they've got 6. Talk about the West Coast teams now. They play each other, and then you have 6 more conference games you have to play. 3 of those at home, 3 of those on the road. So they're only traveling 3 times back here. So big deal. So that's not a big deal. Now, how is that going to work out for these lower tier Big Ten teams? We'll see. But I'm telling you, I think it's going to help all of them, because it's going to disperse the schedule enough to give them a little bit of breathing room. And it gives you the opportunity to raise your program at least to a competitive level. And if you don't, it's your own fault. Yeah, the Big Ten has really kind of hurt itself with these divisions, the Big Ten East specifically, over the last several years, and the 9-game conference schedule. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But that's just some of the things we'll be talking to Scott about. Right. Looking forward to it. More coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. The deadline is passed for the ACC and Florida State. I don't think they can go anywhere. Tickets for the IU Auburn game are on sale. George McGinnis to the Hall of Fame. We'll talk more about all of that and more after this. Brought to you by Hoosier Hank's Pizza Mac, located on North College, the greatest in Todd Bowls, Pizza Mac, and pizzas. More coming up right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the Sorry, Russell, but the weather is spectacular in Bloomington today. I meant to say that. Woke up at 59 stinking degrees, man. And just so you all know, in the breaks here, the reason we always try to ignore that it's not a morning show, because we're on at noon on the radio stations and actually at 3 p.m. in Fort Wayne. So, if you all haven't noticed, that's why I always try to not talk about morning and things like that.
I know, I've been difficult too, especially when everybody in the beginning of the show is sending in good morning.
Well, it's just habit. No, not for me. It's just habit. Today is Brian. Today's forecast in Bloomington, expect a high of 80 degrees with mostly sunny skies. Oh, wow. That's what you call a Chamber of Commerce day.
I'm enjoying the Chamber of Commerce weather. And it's only going to last for so long, though. I don't know if you've looked ahead, but the heat is coming back next week.
Not till Monday. I mean, Sunday.
But it's supposed to be, I mean, at least down in my neck of the woods, we're going to be flirting with triple digits, I think, next week. A couple days. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. But, hey, it's August. You got to deal with it. And really, once September hits, I mean, we're about a month away. Literally about a month away from fall. Once it officially becomes fall, I mean, you can start to. I mean, it'll still be warm for a little while, but I'm ready. Bring on the fall and spring are my favorite times of the year.
Let me tell you, this feels like fall right now up here. It was in the 50s.
At least in the mornings
overnight.
It does.
It was in the 50s overnight and currently 62 degrees in Bloomington.
Fred says all times of the day is perfect for the Jim and JTP show.
Appreciate you, brother.
We do appreciate him.
Yes, Russell.
Yes,
Scott
Russell.
Dolson, the athletic director.
There we go. Not the athletic director, as he typed out by accident, I believe.
Brockway says meetings, unfortunately, tomorrow would work better. Well, tomorrow we're not out of guests. Speaking of which, what is tomorrow's lineup?
I need to check with Dustin, see if he's going to come on tomorrow. But if it's not Dustin, I'm also going to reach out to Todd Golden as well. So it's kind of up in the air. But if it's the regulars, it'll be Matt Taylor and Kristen Airy.
All right,
here we go. 15 seconds.
K-Bro's available.
Okay. If Dustin can't do tomorrow, I'll have K-Bro come on.
Come taste.
He'd still be
Dr.
good for a
Hobbs
segment.
Brewing, Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Appreciate you being with us. Right in the middle of the month, August 16th, baby. Southern Stone. Make sure you stop by. Located at Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington, a part of the Wow Food Group. And you'll say wow when you try the food. It's the best tenderloin I've ever had. Hands down, bar none. I'm not a tenderloin fan. I've said this before, and it is, whoo, it's good. It's a good one. How about the Reds losing again? Man, the Reds are finding ways just to lose. Error cost him yesterday. They lost 3-0 to Cleveland at home. There was a great line in Caddyshack. You're not good. You stink. And that's how it's starting to look for the old Reds.
What about in Seinfeld whenever they're talking about how pathetic they are and they're sitting at the table? You know what I'm talking about? I'm pathetic. Oh, but you know, like I don't know that I'm pathetic.
I remember that.
The accents, but
I don't remember that. I've seen so many of those episodes recently too, and I don't remember that one specifically. But yeah, they're 20. Here's the thing. You know, I've talked about the run differential. They're 25 runs under in the negative. Chicago has been the only team for the entire season in that division that has been in the plus category, and they're plus 62. That means they've scored 62 more runs than they've given up. Milwaukee, who leads the division, is just now plus 2, leading the division, and they're only 2 runs over the run differential. How many they've given up and how many they've scored on the season, which is nuts that you can lead a division with that. But the Cubs are working their butts off to try to make the playoffs. The Reds seem to be working their butts off to work their way out of the playoffs. And I mean wild card. Atlanta is leading the East Division with 77-42 record. They're not going to be caught. Second place Phillies are 12.5 games back, but yet they would be tied for the lead in the Central Division. They would also be in second place in the West, but they are number 1 in the wild card race with those 65 wins. San Francisco, number 2. Do they take 3 wild card teams or still just 2?
It's a good question. I don't know.
I can't remember. If they take 3, then that means the Cubs. No, Miami's got 63 wins. So, yeah, they're struggling just for a wild card spot. But they're just not good enough, basically. It was fun while it lasted, but the truth of the matter is they're just not quite good enough. They don't have the pitching. But gave us something to talk about. We'll keep on watching. Dogface, I missed that. Wrong one. But Dogface says, did you hear that the Milwaukee Brewers owners threatening to move their team? I did not. So don't know much about that. Kevin pointing out the Cubs have lost 2 straight, though. It's frustrating to return home and lose to a bad White Sox team. And they take 3 wild card teams. Okay, thanks, Kevin. I was wondering if they had done that. So there is a 3rd wild card spot, but right now Miami has that with 63 and 58 record. And they're 15 games out of first place and looking to make the playoffs over 2 teams that are only 3.5 games out of first place in their divisions. But that's because the Reds have they're only a game behind Miami, 62-59. Yeah, they're a game behind Miami in the wild card race. So the Reds 1 game out. And Chicago was 2, but they played 1 game less right now is what that is. But so we'll see if they can hang on and make it. I wouldn't hold my breath for that at all. Tickets go on sale for the Indiana-Auburn game tomorrow. Make sure you check that out. Go to the IU Athletics link, or if I can find a spot for you that may be a specific link for you. Originally, tickets were scheduled to go on sale at 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday, August 15th. But hours after the tickets were not available for sale at the previously announced time, the event organizers, the 7 group or the VII group, I'm not sure, sent out an email with updated information for those interested in attending, which it's never good when you start seeing ticket problems. But tickets will now supposed to be available at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday, August 18th. And I'll send a link to John to put up the Hoops Giving event. But just look up Hoops Giving. And but I'm going to send this to John Boy so he has this to post up. But tickets for that, if you like, man, that's an easy event to get to, especially anybody that lives south of Bloomington because it's in Atlanta. Atlanta, an easy 7-hour drive from use Louisville as a waypoint. 7 hours probably max from Louisville. Just go down straight down I-65. And you'll hit it. John Boy, I'm sending this link to you.
Okay.
In the same link that the show link is on, just so you know, on that particular email. If you know what I mean, John Boy.
Do you not see me? I'm here.
No, if you know what I said, I just sent the link, and so you have it.
All right,
Indiana Athletic.
Yeah, I'll have that here just shortly, and we'll be able. People on YouTube will be able to take a look.
Indiana Athletics announced their 2023 Hall of Fame class on Tuesday afternoon. 6 members will be making up the 40th ever Hall of Fame class, including arguably the Hoosiers' best ever basketball player, George McGinnis. This brings the total number of student athletes and staff members to 239. And in this class, Derek Druin from men's track and field in 2010 to 13. Alexei Coral from men's soccer, 96 through 99. Christina Lucas in women's diving. Tina McCall Waters from women's tennis in 78 to 81. Lucas was 06 to 09, by the way. George McGinnis, of course, played basketball for only 2 seasons in Indiana, 70 to 71. And Dr. Larry Rink, the team physician from 1980 until now. My question, and I reached out to J.D. Campbell yesterday, who will be joining us again soon, by the way. How in the world is George McGinnis not in the IU Hall of Fame? He is arguably the best basketball player to ever wear an Indiana uniform. And JD doesn't have, the defined answer, as I'm not sure that anybody does, but he gave a good potential is, and that is, the fact that he left school early, didn't graduate, or not sure if he ever graduated from IU. And I get that. Because I don't know what obviously the qualifications are not that you graduate. But I was still, even with that, I'm still shocked that George McGinnis was not already in. If he was going to go in like he is, then what was keeping him out? That's I'd like to hear what that was from somebody that at the Hall of Fame committee, just out of curiosity, number one. But JD also pointed out, and when he's on, we'll talk about all this. Eric Gordon's not in the Hall of Fame. Eric Gordon played 1 year at IU, and he's played 14 now in his 15th season in the NBA. So, yeah, just curious about that. But there's no question. I think George McGinnis may have been the best basketball player in the history of IU basketball, and that is saying something. And George McGinnis only got to play 1 year of varsity because you couldn't play as a freshman. What's that suck? But in his 1 year of varsity basketball at IU, he put together one of the most dominant seasons in Big Ten history. From Indianapolis, he led the Big Ten in scoring at 29.9, but 30 points a game. Remember, he's a sophomore. He led the Big Ten in rebounding at almost 15 rebounds a game, 14.7 specifically. So 30 and 15 almost. Averaged a double-double, a big-ass double-double. He's a sophomore. He was the first sophomore ever to lead the Big Ten in both categories. He bypassed his final 2 years of eligibility as a hardship case because his father was, I think he had fallen or something. I remember he had a bad accident. But he enjoyed a Hall of Fame career as a professional player in both the ABA and the NBA. George McGinnis first signed with the ABA's Indiana Pacers, where he spent 4 years playing for former Hoosier Bobby Boom Baby Slick Leonard. He led the Pacers to 2 ABA championships. And in 74-75, he was named the ABA's co-MVP with a guy named Dr. J after averaging 29.8 points, basically 30 points again. And I lost my spot. And almost 10 rebounds, 9.5. So not quite a double-double. In the ABA, 30 and 9.5 and over 6 assists. McGinnis went to the NBA in 76 and then played 7 years and was named on the All-NBA first team 2 times and an NBA All-Star 3 times. He scored over 17,000 points in 11 years of pro basketball. He was inducted. He's already in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. He became the 7th person with IU basketball ties to be inducted. It includes Slick Leonard, Isaiah Thomas, Everett Dean, Bob Knight, Branch McCracken, and Walt Bellamy. But there's no doubt in my mind that George McGinnis was the best basketball player in IU history. Those numbers are they're disgustingly incredible. I mean, he did the same thing in the pros that he did in the NBA, in the ABA. It didn't matter where you put him. He was an all-star at every level. And to me, he was the best basketball player that IU ever had. And you talk about championships not won. Indiana went to the Final Four, I believe, in 73. Did they not? You have a senior George McGinnis on that team? Come on. I mean, wow. The 70s were already great for Indiana, but they could have been I can't even tell you how much better they could have been. They could have been the UCLA of the early 70s. They lost George McGinnis and did not have him in 72 and 73, which he would have been 73, 4, whatever. They lose Larry Bird in 74. Think about that, people. Think about that. Lose George McGinnis. They don't have him for his last 2 seasons, and they're not able to keep Larry Bird. So you would have had George McGinnis through 74, Larry Bird starting in 74, and would have been there through 77. I kind of think you know how good they were in 75 and 76. 77, they would have had Bird and Kent Benson still. If they would have had McGinnis in 72, 3, and 4 along on the beginnings of that run, those other guys were freshmen in 74. That was, oh my God. That right there would have been potentially a run of 4 to 5. I'm not going to say unbeaten, but national championship teams.
Break.
Man, we'll talk more about that later. Larry Rink also going in. I want to make sure. Great guy. Pioneer in the medical field. Been with IU since 1980. That's 43 years, people. We'll be back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Brought to you by our good friends from the Wow Food Group. Don't forget to make sure you stop by and visit. Right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether
There you go, Kevin. Great quote. Did I skip Christina Lucas? Did I really? Did I not say her?
You might have.
I thought I said her. I'll go back. We'll go back and get her. Yeah, how much money would McGinnis made? Oh, please. Some good arguments we'll get back into, Robert. Length of time at IU. Did McGinnis set any records? Well, yeah. He's the first freshman to ever lead the Big Ten in both scoring and rebounding. First sophomore. There's one record.
Hey Jim, could you send, if you have it, could you send me Todd Golden's contact info? Because I thought he was on Twitter, and if he is, he may or may not be. I'm not finding his account. I'm looking to see if I just missed it by any chance, but
you have to. He's on.
He is? Okay.
Of course he is. Look, it's Todd Aaron Golden.
Todd Aaron Golden. Let's see if that helps. Oh, I think no, that ain't it. Either way, thank you. I was going to go ahead and reach out to him.
Thank you, Russell. We appreciate you. Hey, if you're listening on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, first of all. If you are not a subscriber, it matters greatly to us. It helps us immensely. So please hit the subscribe button and share it with others that may not know about it. We would greatly appreciate that. Also, if you would hit the like button, that it shares it. I think it shares it to other people who watch similar content, and that helps us immensely. So please hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds to just reach up there and tap that little thing. We greatly appreciate you guys, no matter when you're listening, whether you're listening live or listening right now, which supposed to, if you're listening now, you're probably fast forwarding. Or if you're not listening live, if you're not listening live, you're probably fast forwarding over top of me.
All right, here we go.
To avoid decision fatigue, you pick your plan and pick up at BB's Market with no extra charge. So leave the heavy lifting to us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals in your fridge. Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Don't forget, brought to you by Remax Realty. Our friend Cheryl Sizemore. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. A lot of comments. I've been talking about Indiana taking in their all-star class this year, and if I missed Christina Lucas, I am definitely sorry about that. I thought I mentioned her, and I'm trying to get back to the release, but I'm having problems finding, there we go, where I was. So Christina Lucas, yeah, because she was a big timer. I mentioned her, women's diving, 2006 to 2009. I did not go over all of her accolades, which at both Big Ten and NCAA levels, she was dominant for the Hoosiers. Only female to ever win 4, not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 Big Ten Diver of the Year awards. Yeah, that's a dominance. And only female to ever earn Big Ten Diver championships honors 4 times as well. It's crazy. Hall of Fame career included 6 individual Big Ten titles, 11 All-America honors. Well, now you can be All-American 11 times, but she did. 3 NCAA runner-up finishes and an NCAA championship on the 3-meter board as a senior. After capturing the NCAA championship, she was also the NCAA Diver of the Year, a 2-time IU Female Athlete of the Year. Her accomplishments extend to the international level, where she was a 2-time Olympian in the 3-meter diving, both 2008, where she was 9th, and 12 in 2012, where she was 8th. So all accolades to Olympian Christina Lucas as well. So, but I'm wanting to get back to the George McGinnis chatter. A lot of comments. Did Mark Spitz swim on the team? He swam on IU's team, yes. Is there a Hall of Fame building to visit in B-Town? No. It's, and that's a good idea. Wow, that's a great idea. IU should build their own Hall of Fame so people could visit it. Right now, it's just basically, I think, Assembly Hall, but to my knowledge, there's not. And I've never even thought of that, but that's a good question for Scott Dolson today. An individual Hall of Fame wing. I can see that coming. You connect it to Assembly Hall. You've got, they've already got Cook Hall, that would be the East Wing. So now they need a West Wing. And that could be the Hall of Fame wing. But yeah, you need a Hall of Fame exhibit. I think, as a matter of fact, you build a Hall of Fame wing with the varsity shop. Is that what they call where they sell all the stuff? What do they call that? But anyway, you just would have
the varsity shop. Just to confirm.
That's what I thought. Thank you. But you put the varsity shop there. That's something for Scott. I'll ask Scott when he's on today. Getting back to some questions about when I was talking about Scott. Talking about George McGinnis. Omaha. Thank you, Russell. I always appreciate a good Omaha. John Howell, I'm from Southport. Thank you, brother. Pete pointing out, how much money would McGinnis have made modern day? First of all, that would have been nuts. How much money would he have made in NIL? Had this been modern day, George McGinnis would not have had to leave IU. IU could have kept him because the reason he had to leave was he had to leave because of money. He had a family issue. His father, he had to leave. This was not, it's like Isaiah came from a poor family, but George McGinnis actually had an issue with his father getting hurt, I believe. So he had to leave, but he could have stayed had this been the NIL era. Andrew suggests that McGinnis may have been the best pro out of IU. Kevin says he remembers watching McGinnis in the ABA. Sure wish some of those ABA Pacer games were available on home video. Wouldn't that be cool? Dr. J, Dan Issel. Oh, man, it's like Tropic, what was the movie? Semi-Pro? Hit him right in the jejunum. Kevin says that he believes that Isaiah was the best pro out of IU, and it's hard to argue that, but wow, I don't know, man. What an argument that is. You've got Isaiah, you've got George, and I'm telling you, Eric Gordon has played 14 years of solid NBA basketball. He's not riding the bench. He's playing. Isaiah or Andrew pointing out that Isaiah was incredible. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Brian. Happy birthday, Doug. We appreciate you celebrating your birthday with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. So happy birthday. Hope everyone wishes him a happy birthday. Russell points out Keith Smart holds a place in his heart. Of course, you win a national championship for somebody, you better hold a place in everybody's heart. I was talking about the potential titles lost just in that era. And Kevin says, IU would certainly have more titles if not injuries to Woodson, Whitman, Pat Graham, and Alan Henderson. What might have been? Oh, absolutely. We can go down that road. But I'm talking about these weren't injuries. And I'm talking about two players that were here and left, right, and would have crossed over at a time where IU was probably the best that it's ever been and best that it's ever will be. But that's because it was at a level that no other teams have been. They were at a level where they were unbeaten. Should have been unbeaten for 2 solid years. And that's a team that could have had Larry Bird on it. Thank you very much. What about those teams in 73 and 74 that were still very good? Went to the Final Four, one of those teams. Would have had George McGinnis. If it was 74, would have George McGinnis and a rookie in Larry Bird. Give me a break. You want to talk about what could have been. Just give me that. That's some great stuff. Yeah, it was a rough year with Lou Watson. Kevin pointing out Jalen Harrelson visiting on September 2nd. That might not be a great day for IU football. Well, that's the opening. Isn't that the Saturday? I believe it is the Saturday.
That is opening weekend for Indiana football.
Well, I know it's opening weekend, but I don't know if that's actually the Saturday.
That is the, well, let me double check now. You got me.
Yeah.
Yep, it's the actual, it's the day after the game, right? Isn't the game on a Friday?
No, I thought they're playing Saturday.
Why did I think the Ohio State game was a Friday? Now
I think they
check this.
I think they do have a Friday game.
Take a look here.
But not that I am aware of.
No, I'm wrong. The game after Indiana State is on a Friday.
There you go. Robert Point says, don't discount Tom Coverdale being, yeah, in 2002. No, I'll tell you what hurt that team. They didn't have Kirk Haston that they should have had. Because Bob Knight, for the only time in his career, told a player that he should go pro, but that's because he just got fired. But Kirk also had a family situation. His mother was killed in a tornado. But had that team had Kirk Haston on it, what difference does that make for that team? So, yeah, it's Indiana has a lot of, boy, they could have added a bunch of titles easily. I mean, I could probably come up with 7, and you just get 3 of those. Huge difference. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, Forrest, that was the blow in 75 with Scott May breaking his arm. He says he calls the varsity shop expensive. Well, yeah. That's generally the most expensive place you're going to purchase things. That's there's no secret there. Let's see. I think I've gotten through all the Forrest suggests the best players he's ever seen at IU is Big Mac, Bellamy, and Isaiah Thomas. So, yeah. What question is Russell wants me to ask? Which question, Kevin or Russell? Russell says, please ask this question. And I don't know what question you're talking about.
I remember I was trying to pay attention whenever I saw that comment come through, but it was when you were discussing the Hall of Fame building, I think. I could be wrong.
Oh, and one thing Russell says, it doesn't seem you can just walk into Assembly Hall without being announced or scheduled, but who knows in today's world. It's the varsity shop's always open, and that's on the west side entrance. But I believe you are correct that it's not just open to the world where you can go in, because there are things going on a lot of the times, and they try to keep control of that. But you can get a tour of Assembly Hall, and I believe you may be able to get into the front area.
By the way, while we got a moment of pause, and we're going to break here shortly anyway, this is now a good time to start sending in your questions for Scott Dolson. I see Fred's already got his in there. So if you have something you want Jim to ask Mr. Dolson, and he may get around to it without you sending it in, because I'm sure a lot of you all have the same kind of thoughts and interests. So go ahead and send those in, and he'll be joining us very shortly.
Fred, I'm not going to ask about the percentage of seats allocated, because Indiana has the highest student section in college basketball. 7,000 students are allotted seats for college basketball. That's bigger than anyone else in the game. Bigger than Kansas, bigger than Kentucky, bigger than Duke, bigger than North Carolina. It's bigger than all of them. It's not that they don't get enough seats. It's where they put them. And that is the question I will ask, is about why not dispersing them in a more effective manner. I know that you've got these older, longtime seat holders, but a home court advantage. So I'm going to ask that. I want to ask about the concert. I want to ask about a press box and suites, but I things like that. But we've got to take a break. We've got lots more coming up in the next hour. Scott Dolson, IU's athletics director, will join us, and Rick Bozich, the Hall of Famer from WDRB.com as well. Don't forget, if you're in the market for a home, especially in the Louisville, Southern Indiana area, Barbara Pop has served those communities for over 3 decades. Just reach out to our buddy Matt Lincoln. Matt at barbarapop.com or Barbara at barbarapop.com. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the market.
All right. I've already chatted with Scott. He says he's good to go. So
Righty, tighty. Let's see.
he says he is jumping on now. Here he is. Got about 1 minute till we come back from break. Good morning, Scott. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Mr. Dolson, how are you, sir?
How are you?
Great looking office.
Get some on this camera over here.
There you go. Yep.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Oh, you got a multi-camera system going there. I need to start doing I got to start doing my shows from Scott's office. Camera 2, camera 1.
All right, here we go, guys. 25 seconds.
It's one of the most popular gatherings.
Here, if you need to say something real quick,
Well, I was going to say real quick, is this show something live? If I have to take a quick call from the president, can I jump off, or is that bad?
We will always let you do whatever you need to do.
Okay.
We can mute you.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
All right, here we go.
Entrees, a coffee bar, bread, pastries, all made fresh and mouthwatering. Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Wednesday, August 16th, from high atop the 18th fairway at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Thanks a lot for being with us. Don't forget, brought to you by the good folks from the Wow Food Group, including great places like Feast Market and Cellar, located at Patterson Rogers, right next door to Southern Stone, both two incredible places. We are so fortunate and honored to be joined by the athletics director from Indiana University, Scott Dolson. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, first of all.
Hey, no problem, Jim. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Man, and I know it is a busy time for you. I know there's not a lot going on with the Big Ten Conference right now. So, but what a crazy time. And I know
this will take 1 second. You got to mute me for 1 second.
Not a problem. When the president calls, we do whatever it takes, people. And the president is calling. So Scott's going to step out for just a second, and he'll join us back. But the first thing I was going to talk to him about is all of the changes in the landscape and how IU is going to navigate, benefit. What are some potential pitfalls to look at? I look at some questions here. Robbie bringing up, I'll bring it up now since he's not here because I'm going to answer this. Why didn't you go after Steve Alford? For what? For basketball coach? Well, I would suggest that you look at his record, specifically his record in the tournament. In nearly 30 years, he has made 5 trips to the Sweet 16, maybe, I think, if that. So he just does not have a great record in the tournament. But that's neither here nor there. But as Scott joins us back,
sorry. I told you I was expecting a call. We've got, as you said, so much going on with the Big Ten.
It was perfect. Hey, I said when the president calls, baby, but I was able to get through that because I'm talking about what I'm just going to bring up first is the gigantic change in the college landscape, especially in regards to the Big Ten. And with all of this, I still think that this may help IU in some ways in certain areas with certain programs, but nobody knows better than you. As you are navigating this and looking at this, what are you seeing, first of all?
Yeah, first of all, one of the things that I think is probably important is that there's so much change going on, as you said, in college athletics in general. And you can see it all around the country and the conference expansion, teams moving around. And it's hard because it's a really good thing for the Big Ten. But at the same time, I do feel, and I know Tony Petitti, our new commissioner, who I really love, I think he's awesome. The reality is there are some schools that are out without a conference right now, and that makes it a little hard. So it's hard to kind of celebrate when you see other schools on the outside looking in. But at the same time, for the conference, as we try to navigate moving forward, what's best for the future, I think these moves strategically, starting with USC and UCLA, and now with Washington, Oregon, are really, really good for the conference. I think trickling down is really good for us. And it's hard for me to say it's an exciting time because, again, from an empathy standpoint, I do feel for those other schools, but I do believe, Jim, that it's really good for us. I am, and this is alphabetical, so it's not like I was voted in on this, but I am now the chair of the Big Ten ADs.
Congratulations.
Josh Whitman just went off as of June 30th, so I took over. And as a result of that, I had a unique position to kind of work closely with Tony Petitti as we work through this. And it was a very interesting process and one that I supported wholeheartedly. And again, for the future of the Big Ten, for multiple reasons, these two schools are great fits for us.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to the excitement of covering Indiana. I'm looking forward to Indiana and UCLA in Pauley Pavilion, or in UCLA and Indiana in Assembly Hall. Those are exciting things. On the football side, they're exciting games. But the biggest thing, and this has nothing to do with the realignment, just the dissolution of the divisions, I think is something that is going or can help the IU football program immeasurably, because it just seems like it takes a Bedford stone rock off of their back of having to play, knowing you're going to have to play 3 top 5 teams every stinking year. And that will alleviate and sometimes make the schedule a little easier and feasible.
Jim, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's something that Tom Allen and I have talked about a great deal, way back before even the USC and UCLA conversation started. Was really, it was just challenging for us. And it's hard because sometimes you can look at that as, is that loser talk, or you just have to play the teams that are in front of you, which we agree with and we wholeheartedly do. But, fair and balanced scheduling is really important. And I think moving forward, the ability to make certain that our schedule has the same weighted opponents as maybe other like teams in our league, and that's one of the things that divisions, having, it's no secret, having Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan in our division and playing those 3 schools year in and year out was really challenging. And again, we're not complaining. We just want to make certain it's a fair and even playing field across the board. And we look forward to the new schedule. We're working on that right now. In fact, now that we've added Oregon and Washington, kind of what that's going to look like. But from my perspective, representing Indiana and us, is that it's really, really important that it's a balanced schedule, that other schools have the same strength of schedule as we do year in and year out.
And with that said, I know that you have just, ironically, a couple of days ago, I was talking about things regarding the stadium, and then the next day the announcement came out. You guys were sending out that questionnaire, so I'm glad I was able to prompt that. Just kidding. But we'll talk about that and with that. But is there going to be a bigger commitment to the football program, especially with the potential opportunity here that we just talked about of getting that rock off of you, of maybe now being able to grow a little bit?
Yeah, I think maybe bigger commitment is probably the commitment's been there. And sometimes maybe from a fan's perspective, they don't see it. I give Fred Glass a ton of credit. If you look back in his tenure and the different things that we've done to invest in football, and he and I talked a lot about that in terms of football. You can't just turn the support for football. It's not a spigot you turn on and off. You need to keep the stream going and continually be proactive on what's next. But I will say, having said all that adding UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington, the stakes have gone up higher. And from my perspective, I remember after it was official that we're adding Oregon and Washington, coming back to my office and just sitting here thinking that, hey, we were proactive before, but we need to double down. The Big Ten football is the best of the best, and we need to make certain that we're proactive and we're on the move, and we have a vision for all aspects of the football program. That's not to say we didn't before, but again, adding the brands that we've added certainly takes it up even another notch. So it's kind of one of those situations, Jim, either you innovate or you die, or either you innovate or you're proactive or you're going to get run over. So whether it's our fan experience, whether it's our facilities for our players, our staff, whether it's investing in any aspect that we can, that we think is smart, that's strategic, we need to be proactive in that area, and we'll continue to do that.
With the stadium
questionnaire coming out. What I had talked about is obviously the press box has been there since like the late 60s. And not from a press box standpoint, but I've always said that IU needs a new press box. But I'm talking, we call it that, but it's actually the suites is what it mainly is. Is there any thought, any thinking yet to doing that, putting those up there? And I know that that's a tough thing to do because these things are not cheap. But the corporate suites as a revenue generator, any thoughts to that happening anytime soon?
Well, the reality is that's what the survey and all of our preliminary work that we've already started, and now the survey is a piece of that, is to really take a step back and say, what do we need if the stadium is really operating at the highest level across the board, particularly from a fan experience, from a revenue generating standpoint? What do we need? How many premium seats, whether it's club seats, whether it's suites, how many do we need? What do we need from a media standpoint? What do we need from a stadium operations standpoint? What are the modern day concession stands? How can we transform those restrooms? One of the things that is important to me is that from a fan experience standpoint, we strive obviously to sell out every game. Well, I want to make certain that when we do sell out, that it's a positive experience, meaning that the concourses are accessible, that the restroom lines aren't so long that it becomes a miserable experience, and so forth and so on. So back to your question specific to the press box, once we determine what the overall scope should be for the stadium, again, being proactive, looking forward, then you can get into more of the detail of, can we do that with the existing press box? Can we not? What changes do we need to make in terms of the overall structure, concourses, et cetera? And then ultimately, on a parallel track, we have to really determine what's feasible as well. Because obviously and I grew up in the fundraising world and been involved in several projects where you put the project out and the need and kind of the case for what we're going to do for the stadium. And then you're into the fundraising mode and to make certain you can make it happen. So you need to have that feasibility part to put the pro forma together financially, while at the same time looking at all aspects of the stadium. And this one is from a fan experience standpoint, which includes suite, stadium, club seats, all those types of things. And I just don't know yet what the scope will look like in terms of what the overall project will entail until we get all that information gathered.
Got it. One thing I've been wondering, and I know that there are a lot of things that would go into this, that it might not be feasible because football days are long days. It's an 8-hour day for me. Mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, that's an 8-hour day from start to finish. Mm-hmm. And it is for a lot of fans, but it's longer than that for people like security people, because they're there before I am, and they're not there after I leave, but they're there before I am. So I don't know how long the day is. But what about adding concerts to home football games? Is there something that makes that not feasible?
We've looked at that off and on over the years. One of the challenges is, and that this isn't insurmountable, but whenever you combine two events into one, it becomes challenging in terms of both from a stadium operations standpoint and a ticketing standpoint. That's not to say that again, it's impossible to do that. You generally then need to take a step back and say, what are we really going to get out of that? If we have a concert post game, if we have combining events, we've done a lot of looking into, even with basketball. Do we have a doubleheader with our men's and women's teams? Is there ways to really drive fan support, fan experience? And so it's something that we continue to look at. It's not something that would, again, this is my personal belief, Jim, that I'm not a big gimmick person, meaning I think our football program should be able to drive traffic based on the overall fan experience, tailgating, the great Big Ten schedule, what we're doing on the field, and hopefully creating that excitement. I've never been a huge proponent of, hey, it's kind of like you say you're going to a fight and a hockey game broke out. I'm not big into saying you go to a concert and a football game broke out. I think the football should really speak for itself. And then ultimately, if there are things to put around that create a better fan experience, we're all in. but it's still Big Ten football, and particularly with the additions from the West Coast, I think Big Ten football is going to continue to grow. And then we've got to do our part from a fan experience standpoint to create that desire for our fans to be here at Memorial Stadium, because when they are, I believe it's as good as it gets. And you've been here, Jim. You know, I'm not trying to be a cheerleader or a homer here, but I've been around all the Big Ten, and when it's going well here, from an overall fan experience standpoint, from, as I said, the tailgating fields and coming into the game, and Memorial Stadium is rocking, it's a great atmosphere, and we just need to continue to build on that.
That's like I always say for anything, winning cures it all, man. Winning cures all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kent asked, how will Big Ten realignment affect the Olympic sports? I've always said I'm imagining they're just going to have a lot more regional events with more teams, especially like cross country. It's how they do it in high schools. You just have more teams there. Swimming, you can do that. There's so many of those sports where you can have multiple teams. It doesn't even really matter. Softball, all of those, you can have round robins, etc. And I'm thinking that's going to be the case.
Yeah, Jim, first of all, you know, competition goes up. You know, I was just talking to a few people about this yesterday. You know, when it was back to being the original kind of Big Ten, it was meaningful certainly to win a Big Ten championship. But as we've had conference expansion over the years, you go to 11 and 14, 16, now 18, winning a Big Ten championship always was very special, very meaningful. But I think winning a Big Ten championship with the level of competition now across the board is even going to be that much more meaningful. In addition to that, I think from a travel standpoint, from an impact on our student athletes, we're going to work very closely with the conference staff, with Commissioner Petiti from a scheduling standpoint to make certain that we can, as you said, maybe do some really unique scheduling to make certain that we limit travel as best we can, and to make certain we're looking out for student athlete welfare. One of the things that from our perspective, and many fans don't realize this, our water polo program, which is a highly successful varsity sport for us, our women's water polo program travels to the West Coast probably 6 or 7 times a year, because that's where water polo is very prominent, where there's the teams we need to play. And so we've really learned how, from an academic standpoint, how from a student athlete welfare standpoint, how to adjust, how to make certain that our student athletes are in the best position they can be. And so there's no question we'll have more trips out west, but nowhere near for our other Olympic sports to the level that water polo does. So I think we're set up to handle it. If volleyball needs to go to the West Coast one time a year and do some multiple games in some real group scheduling, I don't think it'll really be a negative impact at all. In fact, it'll be a great experience for them and a great opportunity to play against some high quality teams. So the scheduling is a big proponent of putting together this plan for our conference expansion.
And volleyball and wrestling are two programs that have also been on the rise, man. Angel Escobedo has done a hell of a job. Steve Aird doing a hell of a job, because both of those sports are, the Big Ten happens to be the best in both of those sports. So congratulations to both of those. You have the largest student section in all of college basketball, but they're pinned up in the corner. And I know that you've got longtime season ticket holders, but it would seem to make in Assembly Hall such an unbelievably hard place to play if the students were more around the court. Any chance of that ever happening, at least on one side in the end zones, maybe?
Well, we've continued to look at our student seating in basketball, and that's one of the advantages I've had of kind of being here a long time, is that I've seen it all and looked at different plans, and there's no question that providing the best student experience possible is really, really important to us. In fact, it's a top priority. I know a lot of people would say, yeah, you've got to drive revenue and it's about the money. And I get that, but I think we've proven by having the largest student section that if we're truly about money, we would cut a lot of student tickets and sell those at a full market price, which we're not interested in doing, because again, the student experience is really important. Having said that, we think we've made adjustments. We do have the students on the court level in the one end zone. We've looked at ways potentially down the road, can we put them back in the other end zone and adjust to move those general public seats into the stands somehow. We continue to look at that and find ways to maybe, as I said, create a better student experience, but at the same time, make certain that we are accommodating for our fans who've had season tickets for a long time. One of the challenges with Simon Scott Assembly Hall is students like to stand the whole game. So by putting them in certain sections, if they're going to stand, not only do you block or take those seats out, you block the views of other fans around them. And so that doesn't mean that, again, it's impossible to try to tweak it and find ways for a better student experience. But you have to take into account a lot of things. As I like to say, if it were easy, we would just do it. But we want it all, and we want to make sure we have a great student experience. And actually, what's interesting is when our opponents come to play at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, Jim, and this is across the board, the overall atmosphere, the home court advantage from students on out is always, and this is just a fact. And I remember talking to Roy Williams in North Carolina's AD a few years back when North Carolina came in with a really good team and we beat them. And they said, we've never seen anything like this. I mean, it's unbelievable, the atmosphere here and the energy and just the way that everyone is on top of you. So certainly we have to tweak it. It's kind of a long answer. I'm always open to, hey, we're not just doing it because we've always done it this way, but at the same time, it's pretty good. And sometimes you have to take a step back and realize that it's not totally broken. Let's just tweak it and make certain we continue to find ways to create the best student experiences we can.
Oh, yeah. I remember Roy's comment. He said, gosh, I wish we had fans like this down in North Carolina, except for the Duke game.
Right.
That was his comment. Rick Bozich,
just Jim, real quick, one other thing about that. Our students have been phenomenal. I mean, absolutely, coming out of the pandemic, you never know what you're going to get. But the student support across the board, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball, student athletic board gets a ton of credit for that. But I just think overall, our student ticket sales right now for football were over 11,000, and other schools would look at that and just kill for those numbers. And I just can't thank our students enough. And I don't think maybe they get enough credit just across the board. When you go to a baseball game, our student support is just really, really strong. And again, we don't take it for granted, and we really appreciate it.
Our friend Rick Bozich joins us today, but I wanted to bring him in while he was on here because I know that you guys know each other as well. And I figured, Rick, you'd jump in. And how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm just in between all the different crazy stuff going on here at the University of Louisville.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
I'm good, Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Rick, a question for Scott.
Football season coming up, and you've been to practice. We haven't been. What do you like about what you've seen so far?
Yeah, the first thing for me, and I actually attended this scrimmage last Saturday, but the first thing, I really, really like the coaching staff additions we've made. And I think, in fact, the Big Ten Network crew was at the scrimmage last week with Jerry DiNardo and Dave Revson and Howard Griffith, and I stood with them on the field for about 30 minutes and watched it. And it's funny because at one point they pointed to Bob Bostad, our offensive line coach, and said that may be the biggest addition you guys have had during the off season. And it sounds like sometimes when I'm talking about this, Rick and Jim, I sound like a homer, and I'm not trying to sell anything, or I'm just being candid with you. I grew up an IU fan, and I want the same things our fans do. But I think the first thing is when you look at Matt Guerrero, defensive coordinator, and what he's doing, I just like our staff. So that's the first thing for me. I love the additions. From a team standpoint, we certainly just the eye test. Again, you're talking to an administrator here, not a coach, but I think seeing what we've done through the transfer portal, seeing kind of the young recruiting classes we've had the past couple of years take shape. I think physically, particularly on both lines, and particularly there on the defensive line, I'd say we look the part. We look more athletic. We've just got some strength there, and I think that's evident. And the Big Ten Network crew kind of agreed with that, and they pointed that out to me. The big thing is, which you guys have talked about, I'm sure ad nauseum, is the quarterback battle, and see who ultimately is going to emerge as the starting quarterback. And it's not rocket scientist to say that's such an important position. I don't care if it's high school, college, or pros. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm optimistic. If you'd have told me coming off of last season we'd be where we are today across the board, I would be thrilled. And I give Tom, all the credit in the world for really, pulling up his bootstrings or whatever you call it, and really making certain that we get to work and roll up our sleeves. And I think we put ourselves in a good position for a successful season.
Sean has a good question. With all of this expansion, do you think Indianapolis is in danger of losing the Big Ten championship specifically? Because Los Angeles, the big TV market, that sounds exciting. Playing in the Rose Bowl, playing in Memorial Coliseum, or playing in SoFi Stadium.
Yeah, that's a great question. And with the new commissioner, with Tony coming in, and again, I said earlier how impressed I am with him, and what an incredible he's kind of a behind the scenes person that maybe a lot of people, including myself, I didn't know a lot about Tony Petitti before he was hired, but he's just really blown me away. How impressive he is, how he's understated, but he's the smartest person in the room and doesn't care if anybody knows it. He just wants what's best for the Big Ten, and he's really, really good. I'm just so impressed with him. We have not gotten into detailed discussions at all about the future of the Big Ten football championship or quite frankly, men's and women's basketball. But I do know this. I know that Indianapolis has continued to underpromise and overdeliver. I mean, they just do such a phenomenal job. Mike Babinski, Purdue's AD, was on here with me. He and I both would say we have a thumb on the scale to try to help Indianapolis. And honestly, we don't have to do much, because I think the way they deliver speaks for itself. So I don't know what the future holds. We haven't talked about moving that game around the country yet, but I would still, just given the past performance and the way that, particularly from the football championship game, the way it's gone, I would hope that Indianapolis would continue to have really that opportunity, if not every year, certainly a great amount of the years that we move forward.
You may have already answered this one, Scott, but what motivated you, or what inspired you to undertake the project you announced this week of looking at the modernization of and improvement at Memorial Stadium?
Yeah, really, Rick, it really is that we have to be proactive. We have to have a vision for football, and it wasn't brand new. We've been talking about it. I talked about it, to be totally candid with you, during my interview for the athletic director position. I was asked about where we are from a facility standpoint, because Fred Glass did a phenomenal job improving our facilities across the board. And they said, well, I assume you're pretty good from a facility standpoint. I said, I think that the next thing is we have to have a vision for the stadium. I think from a fan experience standpoint, our projects that Fred accomplished, which were amazing during that time period, the north and south end zones are fantastic. They're student focused, which is really important to us and me, the way we added those. But now I think the next thing from an infrastructure standpoint, the stadium's got so many great qualities, but it's just like Simon Scott Assembly Hall. It doesn't handle a full crowd at the level I think it needs to. And I thought that before we added the 4 West Coast schools. And now that the Big Ten really is, you could say doubling down on football moving forward, we have to make certain, and I think it'd be malpractice if I didn't have a vision, not just for our program, for our football program to grow and to be successful in the Big Ten, but from a fan experience standpoint, it would be malpractice if we weren't looking at our stadium saying, what should it look like in 10 years? What does a modern fan need from everything from restroom concessions, from a press box standpoint, from a premium seating standpoint, to have a vision for that so that we can be, it's kind of, I said this earlier to Jim, if you're not innovative and looking forward, you're going to get run over, and we have to always be looking ahead. And so again, I think it's really important for me in my position and our staff to understand that in the future, what should this stadium, what do we need so that when other Big Ten schools come here to compete, that we've got a stadium that is kind of equivalent to what a Big Ten stadium needs to look like. And we've done great things to improve it tremendously, but now we need to keep that growing.
Scott, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join us today. I know you've got to get rolling, but thank you so much. Good luck. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim. Rick,
Thanks,
you were
Scott.
It's great to see you. Always appreciate seeing you too. Appreciate you guys.
See you
Take
in a
care.
couple
Thank you
weeks.
very much for your time.
Thank
Tell
you.
Laura thanks and Jeremy as well. You guys have a
will.
great
Thank
day.
you. Thank you.
Scott Dolson, Indiana Athletics Director, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Chop Shop. Get to chopping it up with the AD today. Make sure you stop by. Located at South College next to Starbucks. Back with Rick Bozich right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Weather.
Little bonus for you.
Yeah, that's nice. When's that going to be up on the YouTube channel or whatever?
That'll go up at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock? Okay. Very cool. Nice of him to come on.
Oh, absolutely. He's great. And Friday, I have Kalen DeBoer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
got the magic touch, Rick.
I don't know about that.
Taping it, and he's getting up that early in the morning on the West Coast?
Man, he's a football coach. That's what I said. I'm like going, hey, let me know a day where we can tape something, because that's the first thing I said. But no, he's like, that's just 7 for me. I'm like, okay.
He's probably an early riser.
Yeah, those guys are up, man. This time of year, they probably don't sleep. I'm surprised he's even doing it.
Is there any more buzz about the Hoosiers football?
Buzz.
Running backs look good. Receivers look
Look good.
Offensive lines improve, but big questions at quarterback, right?
And of all years, God damn it. Whoops. But they've had a quarterback that would be good for the last couple of years.
Just the
if they had all this other stuff.
Just the Peyton Ramsey or
Nate Scott. We really don't know if the quarterback situation is going to be bad. We just don't know anything about it. We just know that
it's not going to be Michael Penix Jr.
You're not going to have a polished type of guy.
Reading between the lines on some of the stuff from the scrimmage Saturday, I got the impression that neither one played great.
Well, here's the thing. Sorsby's a better thrower.
Right.
Jackson's a better runner, better athlete.
That's what makes me think Tom Allen will go with him, because he's historically gone with the more athletic guy.
I think Jackson now will end up probably getting the nod.
Yeah,
and that
it's just it's also a bad situation that you're going to throw some kid out there to play his first start against Ohio State.
That's the Big Ten's dicking Indiana over. 5 out of 7 years starting against a Big Ten team. 2 of those 5 years are against Ohio State. Man,
right.
Nobody.
One of them was at Iowa. Then last year was Illinois at home. What was the other one?
Penn State.
Penn State for the 2020 season.
Penn State? Oh, that's right. That was
because it was conference only.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, when they played at Iowa 2 years ago, that was only the second time Iowa had opened with a Big Ten opponent since 1979, and that opponent in 79 was Indiana.
Wow.
All right, here we go, guys.
What else going on in Louisville?
Oh,
you're letting him talk about it on the air because it's interesting. All right, here we go.
Provide their guests with an exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat coming to you from the golf club at Eagle Point Studios. High atop the 18th fairway on this Wednesday, brought to you by our good friends from Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Make sure you stop by and visit right off of I-65 and the Lloyd Expressway in Evansville. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com joins us now. How are you, sir?
Good, Jim. Good. Thanks for
He
letting
was
me in
with
on
us,
the
of
last
course.
part of the Scott Dolson interview.
Absolutely. Wouldn't want to do it without you. Great to have him on. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the. I was ironically talking about the stadium the day before that thing came out, but my deal is I just think they need to build a press box. And I'm not talking about for the media. I mean for suites. They need the suites, and you call it the press box, but they need. Louisville's had them since they built that stadium
25 years ago.
25 years ago. How much money has that made them in that 25 years? Illinois has added them. Purdue has had them.
Kentucky did a big renovation to Commonwealth Stadium, now Kroger Field, and initially they just put suites in the corners the way Indiana has them, and they realized those aren't really that valuable. Then they got rid of the old press box and put in huge suite areas, between the goal lines, and they're a big hit. Big social thing, big. I'm sure people go there and entertain clients and all the different kind of things you do at football games.
If you build it, they will come. And
you got to make it an experience that people will enjoy. It's not just about the football, especially when your football team doesn't win consistently. You got to give them a reason to come and say, I'm going to go there, even though I might not be happy with the results. I'm still having a good time.
Yeah, and I think that this is an opportunity, which I don't know if you were on for this part, but getting out of the Big Ten East is a great opportunity for Indiana. I said it was like taking one of these big Bedford limestone blocks off of your back because you are getting hit with it every year. It's going to loosen you up a little bit. Not that you're not going to have to play good teams. Yeah, you are, but you're not going to get punched in the face by a top 5 opponent every other week. So that will give them the opportunity to maybe grow, win a few more games, just get to a bowl game. I think Indiana fans would be ecstatic if you can get up to winning 7, possibly 8 games. That allows you to lose 4 conference games. You lose those 4, but you just got to find a way to win 6, be competitive in 6, and damn sure do not schedule Louisville or Cincinnati for your non-con games, which they are trying to get out of the Louisville game, which I'm sure that they probably will.
Right. It's just a matter of how much they're willing to pay, I guess, to get out of it. The second one, because they've already agreed to cancel the one in Bloomington in 2025. I'd say 2 things. One is the problem at Indiana just didn't happen in the last few years. It was in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s where the administration wasn't aggressive about, and Mallory had his run there, but after Mallory left, they didn't add enough to the facilities. They didn't do enough to keep up with the other Big Ten schools. And because other schools are more committed to football, put more resources in football, have more tradition in football, have a better recruiting base in football, Indiana fell farther and farther behind. And, every day we get pounded with the news that basketball is great, but football is all that matters. And so Indiana's going to have to take football a lot more seriously and be competitive, because as you move forward, and a number of people think this conference realignment game is going to go down the road to, 20 or 30 or 40 schools or whatever. If you're in the position as Indiana is in right now, you are at risk of getting left behind the way that Washington State or Oregon State just got left behind, or Cal or Stanford. You've got to
North Carolina State or Florida State, or those guys.
Yeah, you got to be more relevant. And I give, it started under Rick Greenspan, and I think he had some of the plans to close off one end of Memorial Stadium, and then Fred Glass took it up a whole nother level, and now Scott Dolson's trying to do more, but they're playing catch up, and they're playing catch up with schools. I mean, you don't have to be an economist to realize that if Ohio State and Michigan are selling out, they usually find a way to have 8 home games, at least 7, 100,000 people, so 700,000 fans a year, and Indiana's drawing 6 games and they're drawing 40,000 a year. They're getting 240,000 people. So they're getting almost 3 times the crowd for the whole season. So, 3 times the revenue off football. You can't survive that way. You gotta, no matter how many times you sell out Assembly Hall, and no matter how many times the women's basketball program sells more tickets, you've got to sell more football tickets. And the most encouraging thing he said in that interview is that it seems like in recent years, the latest generation of IU students is more into football, and they've shown up. You can tell the difference in the student section in the last 8 to 10 years. And to sell 11,000 student tickets, that's critical, not only to create the atmosphere in the stadium this year, but you get X percentage of those 11,000 to become season ticket holders after they graduate, after they have jobs, after they contribute money to the school. That's why the student support is so essential.
I agree, and I've talked about with football being the engine that drives the train, and Indiana does not have a car that's close to the engine. The basketball car is too far back, like you just pointed out. While it's a great one, and it's a first class car, it's too far back from the engine. And Indiana has, I think this is the best opportunity they have had. I think this might give them the best opportunity to rejuvenate the football program that they've had in a long time.
Right.
And it's mainly because they're getting out of the damn Big Ten East. It has nothing to do with realignment. It's just getting out of the Big Ten East.
Right. No, that'll help. There's no doubt about it. And I think that I agree with what Scott Dolson said. The hiring of Bob Bostad to coach the offensive line should help the program. I don't know as much about Matt Guerrero, the defensive coordinator, but when they were good several years ago, they had Kalen DeBoer and they had Cade Womack, and those dudes were good coaches, and they proved it by going on to become head coaches somewhere else. That's the unfortunate reality in Indiana. When you have a good assistant coach, somebody's going to come hire them away. And, we can also throw in the strength and conditioning guys that Nick Saban took away from Indiana. So, that's going to be an ongoing challenge, but you can't afford not to – you got to attack every inch of the program, and you got to find ways. They announced just a new weight room, so they got a big donation from a former player, and they're building a football only weight room, and they already have a great weight room, but they're building another one, right?
Something like that. We'll have to wait to see what the exact.
And the next thing is, it sounds like Memorial Stadium's taking precedence, but they need a better indoor practice facility. The indoor practice facility.
That I've talked about, and I'll tell you what. All they need to do is paint the damn thing, put some lights up. Seriously, paint in there. Paint it white on the inside. With all the stuff they do, the graphics, lights. Yes, just freshen it up. My goodness, and that would make a huge difference, because every time I see a clip of somebody showing something, it looks cool inside of there. I see this one, it looks like you're going into just a warehouse, basically. Right. And I don't mean to be negative. It just needs to be freshened up. Hell, it's like your house. Sometimes your house just needs to be painted, and it just needs to change. That's what it needs. It needs to be freshened up.
Well, so far it's obvious they decided it was more important to invest in Memorial Stadium and put better video boards in and enclose both end zones and have some premium seating and all that kind of stuff, which, I'm sure they studied how important that was. And it sounds like they realize it's even becoming more important, because the concourse hasn't changed since the 60s when it opened. I don't think it has, really. The bathrooms really haven't changed.
They've done.
We know that elevator up to the press box hasn't changed. It hadn't changed in 50 years.
Yeah, they need more than one elevator. They need. There's this thing. Yeah, it needs to. It's an old stadium. It was built in the 60s, and while they have done things to it and closed the end zone, and it looks so much nicer, there are just still well. I mentioned the other day, I remember last year I saw a fire in the press box from one of the electrical outlets kind of caught on fire. We had to get out of that.
But I agree with you. One of the things they're going to have to do is, maybe on both sides of the field, take out, I don't know whether it's the last 8, 10, 12 rows of the seats and put in, might even be more rows than that. Put in suites and put in a new press box. And, as bad as our vantage point is, and I know that we're not important, we don't bring in any revenue, but where the coaches watch the game from is up 2 levels higher on the 7th floor. And that's where the national TV broadcasters are. It's a horrible location.
Yeah. Now I don't know if it's worse than as far as height wise as being at Lucas Oil, because
that's not good either. That's not good either.
Why would you make a press box that high? It just doesn't make sense to me. Literally almost have to use binoculars the whole time.
Because where you sit isn't important to the NFL.
Well, I get that.
You're going to come anyway, and you're not paying to come.
You got that right. So what's going on down in Louisville? I know there's some action going on with the basketball program.
Yeah, I mean, there was a player by the name of Trenton Flowers who was in the class of 2024, actually, and last spring he reclassified, committed to Louisville, came here in May or June. I think it was June. He's been here, worked out with the team all summer, lived in the dorm with the other players. And on Sunday night, I think he told Kenny Payne that he wasn't going to be here. School starts next week. He's not going to be here this year. He's going to go play professional ball in Australia. And, considering Louisville went 4-28 last year, that's a blow. And considering the fan base is already nervous about the direction of the program, now they're very upset about this. And, the young man, from what I've been told, has already collected on some of his NIL money. And it's just not a good look for somebody to come and train here for 3 months and say, this isn't what I'm going to do. I'm going to go play in Australia instead. It would have been better if you had never committed at all. But to come here and get people thinking you're going to be part of the team and get the other guys on the team thinking you're part of the team and then bolt, it's not a good look for anybody. And unfortunately, in the current world of college athletics, I think we're going to see something like this happen more frequently.
Yeah, college athletes have more flexibility
than
the pros. I've been saying it. They basically have a free pass to do almost anything they want right now. They in such a short time, they have gone from being completely handcuffed to being running wild through the streets with bats and knives and whatever and pillaging and taking whatever they want.
They're running the show, man.
They are in charge. And I know that the NCAA knows that it's getting away from them, and they never had, I don't think that they ever had a true grasp on it anyway. I think it was all a house of cards that the NCAA was built on, and it is crumbling.
Well, yeah, this underground market's been going on for a while, but the NCAA just looked the other way, and occasionally, if things got bad enough, they'd send investigators in who really didn't have much power to do anything about it anyway. But we all know there's been an underground market in recruiting for a long time. But this is a whole new element of when you throw in the transfer portal and immediate eligibility, you throw these options like overtime elite and this league in Australia that you can say, okay, Jim, you're going to offer me this much. And then, John, you're going to offer me this much. And Scott, you're going to offer me this much. Well, give me a few minutes to make up my mind and I'll go here. And then somebody else will say, well, actually, I'm going to give you this much. And then I'm going to leave. And I don't know. I don't see how some of these coaches deal with it day in and day out, because on all the really good teams that players are probably looking, I'm not getting everything I should get here, or this guy's getting more than I'm getting, and maybe I can get this if I go somewhere else.
Yeah, but that those are not guys that you probably want in your program,
right?
Because they're not committed.
The red flag with this kid was, and people overlook it because he was such a good player, is that I think as a sophomore he played at Huntington Prep. As a junior, he played at a prep school in California, and then last year he played at Charlotte. So every year he played at a different school. and I've never seen him play. I've just seen video highlights. I'm sure he's very talented. I hope he reaches all of his dreams, but I guess what he doesn't understand is, when you do something like this it benefits him and his family, but there are other people that suffer because of it, and it's more than just what feels good at the moment.
We got to take a real quick break. We'll be back with more Rick Bozich right after this. Brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Keep that championship smile. Go visit Dr. J. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're in the
I just saw your text, Jim. That's your last one.
I just wanted to make sure I knew we had one because we went so long.
Yeah, you're good.
Kyle wasn't on today?
No, because he's normally on at 9:30, and we just had to move for Scott Dolson.
Yeah, Kyle wasn't on because of Scott. That's right.
Why is Indiana practicing in
I have no idea.
Tomorrow.
Because I think it's the only day they could get it, and I can't freaking go up there.
No. But it's probably not an open practice, is it?
It is an open practice.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. And Tom Allen's going to be available afterwards.
Oh, wow. Is it? Do they do anything like they do at Louisville where they have like a preseason luncheon where he talks and stuff? Like that Louisville had its luncheon on Monday. They don't do that?
They used to have IU Football Media Day.
They didn't have that this year?
They have not, and I don't think that they will at this point.
You still have Kravitz on?
Oh yeah, he's on Fridays now. He was on Wednesdays. He moved to Fridays because of he's some doctor's appointments for him right now.
Okay. How's he doing with his new launch?
Oh, doing well, I think. Doing well. I'm a subscriber.
Okay.
So he seems to be. I think it'll work out better for him. He'll never have to worried about getting fired. You never got worried about getting fired again.
He came out firing against the Athletic.
He probably should have. He was too good. But oh well. Yeah, he let it. He always does though. He's Bob.
Yep.
I like him. I like his stuff.
Yeah, I need to subscribe and support him.
You're still that unique freaking columnist. You're the only one I've ever seen. I know you don't agree, but you just don't piss people off. Not in the way that most do.
Yeah. I used to do it more.
Well, it was just because anything you'd write that was pro Louisville, it would piss Kentucky people off. That's all it had to be was pro Louisville. Or if it's pro Kentucky, it pisses Louisville people off. That's all it took.
Could be.
All right, here we go, guys.
Drink
You'll have about 6 minutes.
for beer, food, and custom metal art. Check out their custom growlers. Metalworks Brewing Company has an updated menu, new brews, and will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste with Dr. Hops' Brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by K Bello. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Fortunate to be joined by Rick Bozich from WDRB.com, USBA Hall of Fame sports writer. One of your latest pieces you have up is in regards to IU and Indiana and Louisville football, because they talked about they have that 3-game series set. They'll be playing this year in Lucas Oil. Indiana and Louisville have already canceled the game that was scheduled to be in Bloomington. They're trying to cancel the game that would be in Louisville. And in your piece, you say that that's a wise path to take.
Yeah, I mean, when this was scheduled, I guess it was a good idea, even though I think Indiana was coming off a 4-8 season under Kevin Wilson. But as you mentioned earlier, with life in the Big Ten East, where you got 3 games, Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, and what in the last 40 years they've won maybe 2 total games in those 3 since 1990 when Penn State came in. They've beaten Penn State twice. I don't think they've beaten Michigan. They beat Michigan once since 1990. I don't think they've beaten Ohio State at all. So those are 3 L's. That leaves you with 9 games. You got to win 6 of the other 9. They've got to schedule 3 non-conference wins. And although Louisville has a first-year coach and they're rebuilding their program, I understand what Indiana's trying to do. They're trying to do what's best for their program, and what's best for their program is to, when you play 9 conference games, not 8 conference games, you have to win all 3 of the non-conference games.
Absolutely. I mean, back in the Bill Mallory days, that's what you knew. It was a 3-0. That was 3-0. They were going to start the season 3-0 every year.
Well, they were even better back then, though. They beat Kentucky on a regular basis back then. It wasn't like some big upset for them to beat Kentucky when Mallory was here.
And Kentucky is better now than they were then.
They've invested a lot more in their program. If you go down there and look at what Kentucky has now compared to what they had back then, they realize, hey, as big as UK basketball is, football still has to be good. And they've gotten to the point where it's not an upset where they beat Florida. They've beaten Florida 3 times in the last 5 years. They got to live in a more difficult world than Indiana lives in, with Georgia and Florida and Tennessee and South Carolina. Those places are passionate about football. So that's what Indiana's behind the curve. They needed to get passionate about football 20 or 30 years ago. They're trying to change it now, but they're way behind.
In 2015, I'm trying to think who was at Louisville coaching.
It was the deal was cut by Tom Jurich and Bobby Petrino, and it was Kevin Wilson and Fred Glass in the press release.
Louisville was good in 15, weren't they?
Yeah, that was early Petrino. That was right before Lamar got there.
I don't understand why Indiana would schedule that game then.
I don't know. It was part of a football and basketball deal. It was 3 basketball games which were played, and Louisville won 2 of them. They won the one in Indianapolis. They won the one in Louisville, and Indiana won at home. And then it was 3 football games later down the road. And for whatever reason, this first came up, remember, last winter, where Indiana was not wanting to do this. And I think it was too late to get out of the one for this year. And because it's IU's home game, I think Louisville was amenable to not having to play a road game. This is the last one. So I think the challenge for Louisville is, what are you going to pay us to get out of this game? And who would they be able to schedule at this late in the game to replace them? I don't know if Indiana already has somebody in mind to get on the schedule next year, but that's where we're at, and it's the way it is.
Yeah, when you're paying people, it's probably not that difficult to find an opponent, especially the lower end ones, which Louisville's really going to come out on the positive side here, because they're going to get paid and probably bring in some punch dog, use that to bring in some punch dog to beat on.
Yeah, I don't know who they have in their schedule for next year to know if they can bring in another FCS school. You can only play one of those per year. And I don't know who's on Indiana's schedule next year to know whether they can bring in an FCS school. This year they're playing Indiana State, right? That's their one FCS school. That's what you kind of try to do. But I looked around. I mean, you look at some of the other Big Ten schools. I mean, they're already doing some of the same stuff. I mean, Kansas State used this formula 30 years ago to build themselves up from being a doormat. Iowa State has used the formula. Kentucky a lot of years plays 8 home games.
That's a moneymaker. What's up next for you, Rick?
Going to keep chasing this Trenton Flowers stuff. I'm sure a lot of Louisville football, as they get ready for the season, they open 2 weeks from Friday night down at Georgia Tech, and then that's of interest to IU fans because Louisville and Indiana will play 2 weeks later in Indianapolis. So we'll get a kind of a feel for Friday night how good Louisville is, and then on Saturday the Hoosiers open against the Buckeyes, which again the Big Ten they put Indiana down on the tee and let Jack Nicklaus drive it down the fairway.
Unfortunately, we did not get to talk about the Empire Classic, which we will next week. Indiana opening up with UConn, and Louisville's in that as well. But have a great rest of your week, my friend.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks to Rick Bozich. Thanks to Indiana Athletics Director Scott Dolson. Greatly appreciate him. Thanks to John, the producer. But most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here. We're back tomorrow with more. You'll hear from Tom Allen and much more. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. Go out and have yourself a great day, and I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.